Yes, we're live.
It's working.
It's working.
Brilliant. Can you hear me all right online? I wonder how many people are joining us this afternoon. People are welcome to dip in and out, and of course we'll have it all online in the next few days once Phil's edited out. Oh, going on there? Oh, he's not pressed record yet. There we go. So those bits are going online now. How long will they be, Phil? A few days? A week?
Week, yes.
Yeah, about a week.
Yeah.
It's an awful lot of time and effort into it, but it's a one-man editing suite. Okay, so welcome everyone to, are we West Wickham? Yeah, we're in West Wickham. Our ongoing tour around the country has brought us to sunny Kent. A warm welcome to everyone here and to everyone online. We've got some brilliant speakers with us today. As ever, one of our most loyal charges in Chris Tuck. She'll be talking later about survivors of abuse. And I think we've got her former co-radio presenter, Beverley, here. Are you talking later as well?
I am.
Lovely.
And I might just put me on.
Yes.
Brilliant.
First and foremost though, Phil's going to come up as the address from the chair that we like to have. Following the ongoing success and the continued success of The Mouse, which has continued to blow us away, I think since our last meeting was when we won Charity Film of the Year in our category, but Charity Film of the Year. And I got to see Phil pick up this award, which I should suspect he will just hold for most of the afternoon, and stroke. It's actually been rubbed very smoothly on the top here. Pillow, like a pillow. Phil's going to talk to us about an idea we have for one of the next films that we're hoping to produce. Slowly catchy monkey, but we are on it. So a warm welcome obviously to our chair and leader, Phil.
Thank you very much for that introduction, Chris. Chair made me leader, that's a different matter. I'd like to say a very warm welcome to everyone who's come today, and thank you for making the effort and the time and the journey. I know some people come quite far distance. We have Red Pill Phil with us today doing a live stream across YouTube and Facebook, as well as our own Facebook, and recordings for posterity and our archives for later use in the future. There's just a couple of things. Yes, and yeah, we won the Charity Film Award in our category for The Mouse. It was by tooth and nail we got there, and it was pure serendipity that Chris was working alongside us as our patron, and he had contacts to help us to make the film, which was mainly through Slurpee Studios, and special thanks obviously goes to Slurpee Studios for giving all of their time and effort, as did everybody involved with The Mouse, give everything that they had for free, apart from Chris, who had to cough up some money to just pay the essential bits, and yeah, he's very modest about that, but without the effort of everybody involved, The Mouse would never have happened. Another part of that is that it would never have happened if Chris hadn't encouraged me to start writing, put some things down on paper. So kind of like in my van, a couple of lunch times, scribbling away, and I'm usually quite modest, but a lot of people have said, you know, is that the first thing you've ever done in your life on paper? And it's like, yeah. And we went all the way to the top of the Charity Film Awards with my in the cab while delivering parcels, scribbling out of my crazy little head. Anyway, from that I learned quite a bit more about filming and animation and all that, from the way that The Mouse was portrayed and produced and came out. And now we have written myself and Mike Hill, who's one of our directors. We've co-written the next one, which is an adaptation of an original idea that I had. And what we're looking for on this one is, before production, before we start scrounging money and people and everything else, we'd like input from other survivors, especially survivors of child sexual exploitation, because The Shark is about sexual exploitation. So I'm going to read out what I've written for the filming. And if you're watching online, please submit your ideas while I'm talking, by all means. I won't be able to respond straight away, but and also you can email me at phil@voicingcsa.uk, because this is about survivors. It's not about just Voicing CSA making short animation films. It's about you, and we have always been about being inclusive, and if you have ideas that can go into this film, then we welcome them, and if we can adapt them into the film, then we will do, and we'll credit you in the film as well, if you want to name that. Anyway, the animation begins with a young schoolgirl of about 13 years of age sat at a computer. You cannot see what is on the computer, but see words and phrases flying out at her. They are presented in a ping effect, like message received on a computer or phone. She is feverishly typing ever so often and staring at the screen. She laughs occasionally, is clearly very happy. She is holding a plush furry mouse toy that looks as though it is looking at the girl's reaction to the content on the screen and looks sad. On the wall is the day-by-day calendar, and the days peel off and fly away, signifying that the conversation is an ongoing conversation and not a chance online communication. The young girl is being groomed online, and gradually you see an image coming to the fore in the corner of the screen. It's an older guy looking about 20, and you must bear in mind that groomers are as young as 20. If a child is not old enough to consent, then anybody older than anybody of consensual age, as far as I'm concerned, is a groomer, and that is law, in fact. Anyway, the calendar dates continue to fly off the wall, and then there is an abrupt stop, and hearts start swirling around the young girl's head, signifying that she's in love with this older guy. We cut there, and then the same girl is climbing into a passenger seat of a car with a guy from the internet chat. The car starts to race off, and the car morphs into a shark, and she is holding onto the fin. She looks like she's wearing a tiara and a flowing dress. She is laughing and holding on tight. She is a princess to the shark driver. The shark twists and turns violently as she keeps her grip until it stops. Swimming around and pulls up at her house, and she is carried in by the older man with her arms around his neck. Hearts are swirling again around her head. We cut. They are in a room, and it is festooned with boxes of gifts tied in bows, and the room looks lavish and the kind of room a young girl would imagine a princess sleeps in. The bed is plump and luxurious looking, with a bottle by the side marked vodka and a box marked happy. He is saying nice things to her, and the hearts are swimming around her head, and she is happy. He says to her, "If you think you're happy now, darling, take one of these, and you will know happiness beyond your wildest dreams." She takes a tablet from the happy box and swallows some of the vodka to wash it down. We cut. She wakes, and the older guy is in bed with her. She looks at him, lovingly unsure of what has happened. He says, "So glad you could wait to join me. What do you think you were doing?" She looks puzzled and apologises. There are less gift boxes in the room now, and less nice things everywhere. The room is beginning to look quite ordinary, and there are no signs of her looking so fresh-faced and like a princess. He suggests she needs more happy pills. The girl takes the box and empties some into her mouth. The girl grabs the vodka and washes them down. She wakes again, and there is a different guy, much older than the first in bed with her, and she looks sad. The younger guy enters the room and slaps her, and she lands on the floor. He tells her she is gopping for having sex with another man, but if that's what she wants, he will see he will share it with others. She cries and grabs the pills and takes a handful and washes them down with vodka. She looks sad and the room is looking bare and no more gift boxes in the room. Cut. She wakes up and is clearly pregnant. The room is bare apart from a bed in the room. Her hair is lank, she has rings around her eyes, and she shuffles to the window. She wipes the dirty window, and the reflection is the stuffed mouse toy looking back at her with a tear rolling down its face. She reaches for the mouse, but the mouse disappears. Cut. The young girl is holding a child and rattles the door. It is locked and then opens, and there are a group of men in the doorway, laughing and joking. They turn and stare at her and look away, and she closes the door, and the screen fades to black except for an image of the mouse in the centre of the screen. The screen rolls with information about child sexual exploitation, and if a friend looks like they are being lured into something, then it's by speaking to someone is a sign of being a friend, and not by remaining silent. And that's the end of what is the shark. So as I say, any comments or feedback, please pile it in and we'll see if we can incorporate it. Okay. Now, I'll talk a bit later about some of the stuff and all that, but thank you very much for listening, and I hope anyone's got any feedback for that. Now we're going to hand over to our great patron, Chris Harper, who we've known for a few years now, and Chris is going to speak as patron and friend.
So a bit of announcement first and foremost. A fabulous friend of mine called Lindsay Wallace is a teacher at Beaumont School, not too far from London actually, just outside, I think it's near Watford. Anyway, she's managed to commission quite a famous playwright, Mark Wheeler, to write a story about Breck Bednar. It's actually a verbatim play that she's putting on. He's written it based on the accounts. For those people who will remember or who haven't heard of the Breck Bednar story, he was tragically murdered through online grooming at the age of 14. So this piece of theatre is being premiered at the school. It's just in a couple of weeks' time. Let me just double check the date. It's on the week that ends the Saturday the 13th of July. If you're interested in it, or it could even would like to go, I'd encourage you, if you can, email gameover, which is the name of the play, gameover@beaumont.school to find out more. Even if you can't go, this is the first incarnation of it. It will go on, it will have other productions as well. But I would really recommend seeing that. What Lindsay's doing there is incredible, bringing that story to a huge number of children in schools. Really great initiative. So, we've had quite a week or two recently, I feel, of some fairly high-profile people announcing really online or to friends and in public for the first time that they are survivors. In line with the sort of growing awareness, I hope, that Voicing CSA is part of, and all the other charities here present, NSPCC as well, and Bernardo's, and of course the Inquiry. We've got a couple of people who are very close to me who actually recently told me, and in fact they're masses of Twitter followers, that surviving is something that occupies them day in, day out, at times harder than others, like a lot of people here will know. One of which there's a guy called Mark O'Sullivan, who's a brilliantly funny, very dark comedian, actor and writer who's behind Lee and Dean. I don't know if you guys have seen Lee and Dean on Channel 4, but rather kind of two builders, very, very dark comedy, very, very funny. But at the heart of it is a sort of massive black void, and I know that Mark has started talking to NAPAC and to other people about his time being abused and his life as a survivor. He passes us his best today. He can't be here, he's got family commitments. But he'll join us. Oh, There he is. Sports field, we get hit by a tennis ball. Another guy who's going to join us hopefully in the future, again, can't join us now, today, is a wonderful writer, an old friend of mine called Rick Samada, who you may know from his hilarious columns in The Guardian, as well as various YouTube videos and interviews that he does with celebrities and filmmakers and pop stars. And he's a very, very dry, very funny, very eloquent man. He's written a book. And we had a meeting in London a few years, maybe a couple of years ago now, where almost everybody reading who came to talk was publishing a book. Well, Rick's hasn't been published yet. It's coming out in August, and I would encourage everyone to read it. But one of the heartbreaking things that really stirred me, I hadn't heard from Rick in a while, and I knew that he'd suffered from depression, and that's really what his book is about, the sort of massive, life-altering chaos that his depression had created in him. He wrote me this beautiful card about how he'd like me to read this. And I was very touched. I mean, he's a good friend, and I hadn't seen him for a long time. He writes brilliantly. I'm going to read from it now, and you'll hear. But chapter 2, I suddenly find myself absolutely trembling with a lump in my throat, as he starts with a chapter he's called How to Remember. And the rest of this book is about his life coping with depression. But chapter 2 is about being abused as a young boy, a 6-year-old. And with your permission and his permission, he's very pleased and very touched that we're going to hear it. But with your permission, I'm going to read you bits of it. I'll stream through to bits that I just think really resonate with the stories that I've heard from you guys over the last couple of years, and also that link very tightly, I think, to the world that we try to create on Coronation Street, and also the stories I've heard from, well, throughout my time with Voicing CSA. So, are you sitting comfortably? I'll soon ruin that. So we start, and he's travelled north to Scotland to visit his mum, because he's decided to tell her about what happened when he was a kid. The biggest obstacle to writing about my life was an internal, arguably serious handicap, the fact I didn't remember it. I've always had an extraordinarily poor memory. I'm one of those people who always forget a face. There was a strong sense that forgetfulness and the corrosion of my mental health at a young age were bound together. I was hesitant to step into the fog because I knew there were monsters in it. There are secrets you cannot let people read about in a book first, secrets that can tear your world apart. That's why I had come all this way, to speak mine in a place far from home. I didn't want this conversation and couldn't avoid it. I was about to selfishly destroy one of my mother's closest friendships, but I also didn't know how to live with a secret. There being nothing else to do on the harbour front, my mother and I sipped from polystyrene cups next to a bucket of smashed crabs. The day had resolved itself in grey, and I felt hopeless. If I didn't do this now, there was no reason to suppose I would ever have the courage. And so, staring into my cup, spinning liquid sucking me down, I took a breath and broached the impossible. Remember when we stayed in the home of your friend, D? Sometimes when you were out, the son, the eldest boy, my language started to break down, burning off in the heat of its meaning. He made me do things. I never wrote about a sexual abuse twist, because I know it's never a twist or a neatly plotted revelation. It's always there, has always been there, eclipsing everything else. It's also a thief, stealing memories adjacent to it in time and space, undermining the capacity to hang on to events decades later. This is the point at which my brain started to go wrong, the place from which the blankness spread. Though I don't remember everything, I remember enough. I know I was young because my body was small. I can't bring to mind many details of the home where it happened, but recall everything about the room. I don't remember his face exactly, but I know his name. I particularly remember the quality of his attention. He liked to get me alone, sullen in the presence of others. As soon as they left, it was as if he'd been suddenly switched on. He'd turn his attention to me with a conspiratorial excitement that was new to me and exciting. It was thrilling to be seen by someone who wanted to show me things, only me, because I was special. Everything in his behaviour, from the revelation of the disguised self to the locking of the door, told me this was privileged experience. I had the sense he could show me a new world, and access depended on being able to keep a secret. He took me to his room and told me to take my clothes off. I can't remember how many times I went back to that room. After the first few, I tried in an untutored way not to be present, to just not be there. My mind started to fracture, the experience becoming cut-up film stock fluttering in the light, disconnected images and vivid sense. There's no such thing as a 6-year-old man, only a child with decades of trouble ahead. After trauma, our brains change, interacting with our nervous system in new patterns. Depressive responses are all but inevitable. Feelings of threat remain near the surface, with the stress hormone cortisol released on a hair trigger. Following a situation of extreme helplessness, we can lose our fight or flight instinct, adjusting to the reality of that episode of violation. Adjusting to the reality that episodes of violation are inevitable. We give up trying to avoid them. Often, we seek them out instead, repeating dangerous experiences of the past in an unconscious attempt to fix them. There are implications too for the memory. Ability to recall can become fractured, victims becoming amnesiac. This resonated deeply with my experience, explained the way I forgot important people or events, mixed up blocks of years and overlooked others. A neurological reaction to trauma explained why I was a stranger to myself. Child abuse is a spreading stain, a gradually disfiguring ugliness. For survivors, it feels existentially threatening to acknowledge, yet impossible to think around. Impossible to be at home in your body without at once admitting the body's total vulnerability. Most people don't know this about me, that I went through this. It is the dread I dare not speak. When I force myself to, I'm astonished at how near the surface the emotions are, horrified by my feelings of guilt, and appalled by my silence, even now. Why? Because it reflects my silence then? The special status of child abuse obscures how exceptionally unexotic it is, too. It's common, banal, and more devastating for being so. Statistics vary, but most indicate that 1 in 5 girls have been abused, and 1 in 12 boys. It's a meaningless figure. Here's another. 1 in 3 of these don't tell anyone, except by definition, later they do. What about those who never tell anyone? Children will stay silent about abuse even after they've been diagnosed with venereal disease. The real figure is unknowably high, shockingly ubiquitous. I'm staggered by how many friends and acquaintances describe similar experiences, though usually women. Either I've been exceptionally unlucky, or men are disproportionately afraid to talk about their experience. What about boarding schools, Boy Scouts, bad seminaries? I cannot wonder at their silence without being drawn back to my own. Why didn't I speak out? First, saddest, the child's horror of getting in trouble. The half-knowledge that something isn't right leads to the assumption of complicity and guilt. Abuse corrupts the developing self, and as I grew into a teenager, all I had were questions I had no one to ask, and a sexual self-recrimination. I tortured myself with thoughts that there was something about me that had led to this violence. Did I deserve it? Was I asking for it? Finally, as an adult, I was reluctant to disturb family dynamics. It would have been a huge upheaval and upset my parents, who had enough problems of their own. Besides, One has generally learned some ways to partially handle trauma by then. Why look for the landmines 50 years after the war? This is how abusers get away with it. Exploit ignorance or weakness, make others feel the guilt they should be feeling, and keep their secrets for them. They have a triple lock on our silence. Now I know that no one is ever asking for abuse. The responsibility for sexual assault rests with those who commit sexual assault. I know that curiosity is not the same as pleasure or consent. A child cannot consent to what they do not understand. Back home, I did not understand who I was anymore. Something changed. I stopped speaking, developed new fixations, retreated further into myself. The rest of my youth, I bore a violation like a beacon, like a broken window. There are people who will find you interesting for the reason others find you boring, because you are quiet and you cannot meet their eye. Men in parks and parked cars, by cemeteries and schools, a curse be seen only by those who wish you harm. When quietness was ousted by adolescent rebellion, I remained hesitant around them. I never stopped when they talked to me. I never took up their offers to buy me booze at the off-licence. If a stranger were to walk in time with me, I would step into the road, stopping traffic. I kept myself alone the rest of my teen years and thought I had made it. But they are patient, these men, and if you carry no safety within you, then you are never really safe. And he talks about a flashback that he had. Back at the Crabs, I was working up the courage to break my mother's heart. The fear of provoking anger or disgust gripped me, the muscles in my neck tense with stress. I couldn't go on any longer and was tired of carrying this alone. I felt a sense of momentum carrying me over my stammered words, the vertigo of the tipping roller coaster. Your friend's son made me do things. I was met with silence, truly awful and too long. I pushed her away for good. I used to be her miracle child. Was she now ashamed to have brought a dirty thing into the world? Impossible to dampen the panic, quicksilvering up the sides of me, until I noticed that the silence felt soft, not hard, as if she were leaving space for me to talk more. I had left the thought open, as if more was to come, yet I was not speaking. She couldn't read my mind. If I wanted her to understand what had happened, I would have to speak again, explicitly. I started to sweat. Throat constricting, knees and elbows tight, legs tense, pounding in my head. It had cost me so much to come this far, to lift this dizzying weight. But once more, cowardice won out. The conjured mirage started to burn off in the sun. I shut down. I'm so sorry, she said, eventually. There was so much wrong in that family. I prepared myself to be the one saying sorry. I'd never imagined being apologised to. I was all at sea. She told me about the father of the house, an alcoholic who thought of his wife and children as property. He bashed her around. In addition to verbal and physical abuse, he inflicted emotional humiliations on his family. He found it difficult to accept his son becoming a teenager. I don't know the extent of what that man did, but he changed a few brains too. I was not the only one brutalised in that house. All of this happening before I entered the scene. Now I was a grown man, still struggling, as was my assailant, who I would learn had cancer of the stomach. I don't know what I expected coming into this conversation, how speaking my secret would feel. I guess I dreamed of closure, something televisual. Here was a glimpse of generational abuse and the pattern of pain. My body could not accept tenderness. It wanted someone to blame. I watched myself, turning away, walking away, hands dug into pockets, fisting the material taut like a sail. In the months after that conversation, something strange started happening. Things coming back, images bellying up from the murk. My childhood in parts, flashes, of people and places. This one arrived complete, not fragmented and feeling its way at first, but a full sequence and unavoidably present. I'm in the north of England, sitting with him, my abuser, and we are the only two people in the house, so I know what's coming. He is talking, and I am retreating inside myself. A thought forms as I sit there, a plan of sorts. Normally when people run away, I'm thinking their bodies betray them, they hold their breath, glance where they will run, stiffen their legs, they radiate fear. What if I act normally, force my body to look at ease, control my breath, then from nowhere, pow, spring up out of the room, down the corridor to the room where Mother and I sleep, which has a bolt on the inside. The element of surprise on my side, I could make it, lock the door and be safe. Maybe only for a day, but maybe for a week, depending on the others, depending on when the others will be out again. I have to try. I soften into my sitting bones, force myself not to glance at the door. I wonder if my uncommunicativeness is drawing attention to itself as minutes crawl by, willing silence to silence itself. His words are a buzzing in my head, sometimes with a lift and a pause, the music of a question before he resumes. I find this frightening. How unburdened by my muteness he is, the way he continues to talk as though we're holding a conversation, as if I am already not here. But I sit on my fear and wait for the moment of escape to arrive. A secret moment, one that does not feel appointed, is not a moment at all, a nondescript scrap of non-time, indistinguishable from those around it. Now, I spring up and burst for the door, my twig legs numb beneath me, unprepared for action, as if only parts of my body knew the plan. Unbalanced, I yank the door open, lurch through, and I'm almost falling sideways down a wallpaper tunnel towards safety. I hear crashing behind me, but I make the threshold, turning the instant I'm in, fingers reaching for the bolt. Bang! The weight of a large body hurling itself onto the other side of the door. My hand is torn from the crenellation of the bolt before it can be drawn, cutting my fingers as my body is thrown backwards, and he is in, standing over me. Of course he is. Taller, stronger, powerful. I start to cry. Obvious now that pure predatory instinct must have brought him to his feet a split second after I ran. There had been no stalled moment, no window of opportunity. I don't remember if he was angry or if he spoke at all, the buzzing in my brain tuning out. He came in, bolted the door, and mercifully, that's where memory once again leaves me. I replay the scene at night still when things are bad. Even in the few seconds it took, the meaning was clear. Felt clear to me even then. I was not safe. I could not make myself safe. This is a threshold beyond which innocence cannot cross. Is it fair to lay the blame for everything that followed at his door? Hard to say, but I know I will always be a child reaching for a bolt. Thank you for letting me share that. Rick's book is absolutely incredible, really moving, powered by the truth. And in it is a phenomenal letter to his abuser that he then writes. I'm going to go and sit down and recover, but thank you very much. It's called I Never Said I Loved You. I never said I loved you. I never said I loved you. You'll find out how to say it inside. It's published in August.
She's happy to go live.
Thank you very much for that, Chris, and I'm sure the sense and the meaning resonated with many survivors of child sexual abuse. It certainly hit a few chords in my own life, and looking around the room certainly hit with others, so thank you for sharing. Next up we have Beverley Rhodes. Sorry, Webb, sorry. Oh, that's one of my regular customers. I the parcels to. Lives in Sweden, Westerby, Beverley Rooms. Beverley Webb. People's names stick in my head. Beverley Webb has worked alongside Chris Tuck, and they've done lots of radio presenting together. And Beverley today is going to be sharing a poem. Beverley, I would just like to point out that Beverley was a little bit concerned about going live on Facebook, but being with us here, as with all Voicing CSA meetings, people get some strength from somewhere, and Beverley said, let's do it live. So I'll give you Beverley Webb, and bear in mind, this is the first time that Beverley has spoken at any of our meetings or in public. So thank you, Beverley.
Hello. Having a voice is a very important thing for me and for other people. And there are different ways to have a voice, and it's important to acknowledge and give space to other people. So I share my message for several reasons. The first is for myself, for the voice that I didn't have as a child. The second is for other victims and survivors to know you are not alone. Wherever you are in your healing journey, there is someone there beside you. Thirdly, for all the supporters, families and friends that haven't experienced abuse, but actually want to be able to ask questions and are not sure sometimes what to say or how to say it. And I just say, it's okay, just ask a question and we'll be honest into how we want to respond. The fourth and very most important reason is to raise awareness for proactive protection for our young people of today. They are our future, they're our leaders. And I'd like to see a day that as adults now, we can have these difficult conversations and open them even when we feel vulnerable. Yes, and I feel vulnerable today. And so I wasn't going to speak live. But actually, it's important because we open the pathway for young people to say, I need to talk, there's something I want to say. So I just want to take you back to when I was 16. And I lived in Bromley in a hostel. Christmas Day, I was sitting around the table, Christmas dinner, with about 5 other vulnerable young people, and we were having Christmas dinner. And it struck me when I was sitting around that table, who really knows who we are? Who really knows the story behind us and where we've come from? Because nobody's asked. So I'm going to give you a little insight into where I came from before I share my poem. One of my first memories is when I was 4. And I remember the door ringing, and in walked a police officer, smiley face. And she had about 2 or 3 other civilian people with her. I don't know where my father was on that day. It was just my mother and 2 younger siblings. The smiling police lady helped us into the back of the Black Maria and took us to Penge Police Station, to a very small room where there was just enough room for a big desk, a filing cabinet and a wooden chair. It was one of those chairs where it went round you like a bucket with wooden spindles. Myself and my younger sibling were standing next to my mum with the youngest on her lap. After a while, we were taken away from our mum, and that's when we became scared. Obviously my mum's reaction, we absorbed that. And everyone was very nice, but that's when we started our journey in care. Now for most people, that would be awful. but actually it was one of the best things that could have happened for me, and I speak for myself and not my siblings. We were taken to Avonstowe, which was a children's home in Crofton, Orpington, Kent, and we were there for 6 wonderful years. During that time, we had another sibling that came to join us when he was 6 months old. And my mum and dad continued to have 2 other children too. So every other weekend, 2 of us would go home regularly and visit my parents. When I was 10 in 1974, we got the wonderful news in the December that we were going back home to live with our mum and dad and all of our siblings together as a family. Isn't that wonderful? Isn't that what we all want? Isn't that what society says is right? For 3 nights I had night terrors. I still remember those night terrors. I was comforted. I was cuddled. I was never actually asked why. So we went home. I was 10. My mum will have been nearly 27, and suddenly she's got 6 children, 10 and under, with my dad. Within a year, I became the main carer, and another year we had no gas or electricity. So by the time I was 13, luckily, some people found the courage to call the NSPCC. And I remember that man knocking on the door too. And I was able to guide him to the pub my mum and dad would be at. Well, if they weren't at that one, they'd be at the other one. It was a matter of fact. Isn't that what happens in every family? Thankfully, within a couple of weeks, we did go back into care. The 3 youngest went into care in Croydon because we were living there. But do you remember the police that took us in the Black Maria? We were under a court order. So we should have been protected. So we went back into care in Beckenham. At 15, I wanted to be part of a normal family. I wanted what other people have. Isn't that what we read about in books? And I was very lucky. I was fostered by my English teacher. I didn't know how to be part of that family. I might not have outwardly had behavioural issues, but there were some very simple things I just didn't know how to function. One of the things is I didn't know how to be looked after. I was the carer, so how could somebody else look after me? That was instinctive. Within a year it broke down. Hence, as an emergency, I went back into care for a week at 16. If you're not aware, and it's still the case now, legally you're only allowed in care until you're 18, and then you're on your own. So that's when I asked, well, if I'm going to live on my own, I may as well do it at 16, while I've still got some support. Hence I ended up in the hostel. However, don't be sad for me, because they were the best things. There was another side that was happening. And I told you about the first memory I had at 4 being taken, or one of the memories, being taken by a police officer. What I haven't shared with you, and what nobody ever asked, was what else was happening. And I remember an earlier memory of when I just turned 4, or was turning 4, and that was the first time my father abused me. I can see that room now. I can see the images around the room. And actually, one of the images triggered me only 2 years ago, because it was an image on an advert for a famous beer. So all those changes, all those people in our lives, and nobody asked, and my dad continued to abuse us. Thankfully, my second children's home, Auntie Helen, who ran that children's home, very strict, but she taught us about self-respect, and I remember her sitting down and having a conversation. She doesn't realise today how she gave me the permission to just say no. That changed a lot of things with me with my father. I'm not going to go into any more detail about abuse because there's some things happening in the background. However, at 16, sitting around that kitchen table at Christmas with the other vulnerable young people, I knew that when I was in a better place, I would use my voice, as I said when I first started. I knew I'd survive. I'd been surviving since I was 4. That was something I knew how to do. Being vulnerable, that's harder. Looking after yourself, that's hard. Learning self-care, that's my #1 priority now. It's not selfish, it's important. Physically, mentally, emotionally. It's not one thing, it's all of them. So something I'm going to share with you now is something that I wrote during one of my counselling sessions for touching base, because I do work with other survivors now, but to enable me to do that effectively, I have to make sure that I'm in the right place too. But I struggled to always connect with my inner child, with that young girl, because I was never that young girl. I've always been older. The other thing I was always struggling with is the messages, the things people say, intentionally, unintentionally, and sometimes through ignorance, and I mean that in the purest form. So this is called Don't Tell Me, Ask Me. Don't tell me I will be okay. Ask me how I am. Don't tell me to stop crying. Ask me why I am. Don't tell me you're doing it wrong. Ask me if I know how. Don't shout at me if you're angry. Ask me about it when you're calm. Don't punish me for trying to talk to you. Ask me gently, what do I want to say? Don't assume you know best for me. Ask me how I feel about it. Don't make me feel guilty for saying no. Ask me what's right for me. Don't talk about me when I'm in the room. Ask me my thoughts too. Don't tell me I'm bad. Ask me why I did it. Don't tell me to be strong. Ask me how you can help. Don't tell me to get over it. Ask me what I need. Don't judge me on what you have heard. Ask me about my story. Don't label me with your own beliefs. Ask me about my journey. Don't tell me, ask me, no matter how young I am. Don't tell me how I should be, ask me how it is. Don't tell me how I should act, ask me if I know. Don't tell me who I am, ask me who am I. Don't tell me to respect you, ask me what respect means to me. Don't tell me to hug you, ask me how I feel about it. Don't tell me to kiss you, ask me as I have a choice. I may be young and vulnerable, however I am older than my age. Ask me how it feels at times, so I can use my voice to speak out and be heard. That's my story to you.
Thank you very much, Beverley. Some very powerful, moving words there. we are going to take a short break for a cup of coffee and some biscuits, some nice biscuits, cookies, Viennese balls. Yeah, so we'll be back in about 15 minutes after a short break when we have some more speakers, and some people are speaking for the first time again, and of course the fabulous Chris Tuck, who found us the venue and has put in a great deal of effort to bring us here today. So anyway, back in 15 minutes.